Okay, so lab week 1, both did the first day forms. Just double checking.
The ones that you.
The first day of class with your name and where you're going. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've got a code of conduct form that we have for working up here. Needs to be updated with our new name. We just haven't got to it yet. So, Marshall State Code of Conduct. Code of conduct is a public statement of standards developed for faculty, students, staff, and visitors. This code of conduct aims to guide faculty, staff, students, and others in identifying and resolving issues of moral and ethical conduct, which may arise in the course of their duties, and in doing so, maintain the public trust and confidence in the integrity and professionalism of Morrisville Dairy. Any additional information or clarification is needed, please contact the dairy farm manager. That is currently John Mills, not Sean Bosser. That's one thing we got to update. So principles, we have respect and integrity. So be polite, respect, be polite, greet others. Greet all those that you meet, your colleagues and peers. I might forget that one, so remind me as we go by. Be mindful of other spaces. Think before touching, grabbing, rubbing is unwanted and offensive behavior. There's a difference between showing compassion and inappropriate touching. Be respectful of differences of others. All are an integral and welcome part of Morrisville Dairy. Be professional. You represent Morrisville State College, Morrisville Dairy, and yourself. So for better or for worse, if I got arrested today, I'm sure they would lead off Steve Mooney, professor at SUNY Morrisville. I'm stuck connected, so you are too. So the things you do will affect on us and yourself. There's a connection in both directions. Vulgar language is inappropriate, unacceptable, and will not be tolerated. So you'll have to call me out on that. I have a very foul mouth. Be respectful of one's safety, belongings, and personal space. Explicit pictures, jokes are offensive and strictly prohibited. The use of electronic devices, texting, calling online during work hours, lecture, and labs by students is strongly discouraged except for work and situation emergencies. We've tried a couple different approaches. It comes back to cell phones are the best use of the best way to get a hold of something if something bad happens. But we'd like you to stay off your phones, be aware of your surroundings, where the skid loaders are going, where the cows are. If you're focusing on your phone, you're not focusing on your surroundings. So from a safety perspective, put your phones away as best you can. Be respectful of the college dairy business operations. Follow established standard operating procedures. We have ways we do things, and because there's so many people here, like milking, there's probably going to be 20 different milkers here by the end of the week. If everybody does it the same, the cows are happy. If somebody does it different, the cows are not. And we usually get a spike in somatic cell every September when the students come back until they get up to speed. So do your best to follow what we do things. It may be different what you're used to, but we all need to be doing the same things. Milkers, pushers will have no visitors. Any individuals not scheduled to work is considered a visitor. Be respectful of Morrisville Dairy's equipment and facilities. Return tools and equipment to their proper place. Again, with so many different hands around here, putting things back where you got them saves a lot of time and aggravation, and we don't have to sprint around looking for things. Don't misuse, don't steal. Integrity. As employees and students, we are representatives of Morrisville State College at all times. Always behave and speak in a professional manner about the college, your peers and colleagues. Avoid gossip. When in doubt, find something positive to inject into the conversation. Be a leader and find the positive first. Handle animals so they are safe, calm, and comfortable. No abuse, injuries, will be tolerated. We have fired people for the abuse of animals here. Take ownership of your mistakes and be accountable for your actions. If you break something, please tell somebody. It's really difficult when you come into your shift and something that could have been repaired 4 hours ago is broken. So let people know, talk to John, talk to Micah, let people know. I'm sure you won't have done something worse than a previous student. One student take out a whole brick wall or cinder block wall too fast with a skid loader. Not a pretty incident. We also had another student when she was learning to feed, accidentally bumped the tractor into gear with her elbow and started a backward spiral with the feeder wagon and snapped off the PTO shaft. So we were thinking about framing that because that doesn't happen every day. But the feeder was eventually able to get on the tractor and shut things down, but she was not experienced enough yet to know where everything was and how to shut things down. So alcohol and tobacco are strictly prohibited on Morrisville State College property. So if you feel you can abide by these, sign, print your name, put your date, your MID on that. We'll turn that in. The second thing is we have a liability waiver. Did any of you guys get that in your email this year? Okay, last year they sent them out an email. I don't think they did that this year. So we've got hard copies. So this is the liability form that the lawyers on campus want you to know that cows are big and scary and can hurt you. So I'm sure that's something you guys need to know or are unfamiliar with. But there is that. So I'll call your attention. Most of it's legalese about who undersigned are and what livestock is and all that stuff. I'll call your attention on the front side to the 8 or 7 different things they're warning you of. So undersigned persons are fully and unconditionally agree to assume all inherent risks and intrinsic dangers associated with equine and dairy related activities, including but not limited to the following: the propensity of a horse or cow to behave in a way that may result in injury, harm, or death to persons on or around the horses and cows, the powerful and potentially dangerous and destructive ways in which these large animals behave, including but not limited to bucking, shying, kicking, running, biting, stumbling, rearing, falling, and stepping on any person on or near a horse or cow. So what I think they did is they pulled a boilerplate related to horses and just stuck and cow or cow in each of these situations. The unpredictability of an animal's reaction to such things as sound, sudden movement, unfamiliar objects, persons, or other animals. 3, the unpredictable or erratic nature of other horses, cows, or persons related to equine and dairy behavior. 4, certain hazards such as stables, barns, arenas, training surfaces, and subsurface conditions. 5, collisions with other animals, gates, fences, gates, barriers, objects, and persons. 6, the potential for the rider, participants, or others to act in a negligent manner that may contribute to the injury of the rider or others, such as falling to maintain control, failing to maintain the control over the animal, or not acting with his or her riding ability. And 7, unforeseen and unpreventable accidents, events associated with and a result of horseback riding, being around horses and cows in general. I assume push comes to shove, you will still be able to sue the school if something's wrong. So I assume both are 18. Mm-hmm. So you can sign the back, your legal signature, print your name and date. We don't need a legal guardian for this particular document. If you have objections to this document, you don't have to sign it, but we probably will have to go talk to the dean about your objections. So any questions or concerns? So paperwork out of the way. Wait for Vanessa to come here before we do mug shots. I'll take all three of you at the same time. We're gonna do the tour real quick and we'll get you to sample some feed real quick as a group. So you should be over here about 2:30 when they're done milking. So what do you need to be successful in college? What are your thoughts on that? Good time management. Showing up to class. Things like that, right? So in Morrisville, you definitely have to show up. We're a hands-on school. It's hard to do this stuff remotely. It's hard to do these things. It's through lecture format. So show up, make an effort on some level is important. Anything else that might be helpful to you? We think about focusing on just in college, be successful in college, but being successful anywhere. Probably there's a bunch of things that extend over all of those areas. So you came up with time management. Can you list two more?
Figure out.
Okay. What works for you is really important. What else? Ask questions.
Yeah.
Take advantage of what's here. You're paying $100 an hour to listen to me. Now that's probably not worth it, but at least it's not entertaining as some other things. Somebody, financial, the government, whatever, if you do the math, it's about $100 for every 50-minute lecture. So $2 a minute. So if you're gonna spend the money, at least walk away with some credits that you can put somewhere else. There's kind of nothing sadder than the people that just kind of walk away, give up, and they owe all this money and these loans back, and they've got nothing to show for it. So we'll work with you as a group, as you're experiencing right now. We're trying to get things caught up, get things taken care of. So what does it take to be successful? There are a number of different things that are thought to be. So being college, people go out and research these things. What's the difference between students that are successful? I assume they are referring to students who are successful on a grade point average. I'm not a person who believes that grade point averages mean anything too much. What's the phrase? The world is run by C students. So I think there's a disconnect between success or intelligence and the grade point average. But what do we see? What do we have with students who are successful? So Professor Downing did some research and he found that the choices of successful students, they're going to accept self-responsibility. They're going to discover self-motivation. Many of you are away from home for the first time, at least some of your classmates are. They've got to figure out how to get up and get where they need to on their own. And maybe reaching out to a friend, like our fourth years. We had Emily do the overnight last night at the state fair. She made sure Lauren got her out of bed this morning. She slept through 3 alarms on her phone, but Lauren went and made sure she got out of bed so they get their picture taken for the sale catalog this morning at 9:30. So figuring out what needs to do, mastering self-management. I'm not sure what the difference is between those two. Motivation, management, I guess there's a slight difference. Employee interdependence, what does that mean? Yeah, working with people.
Like not independent, but not being afraid.
Interdependence is the relationships between people. So there's intra. What's that? Intra. Get the word. It's one's intra, one's inter. knowledge, internal knowledge. You understand yourself very well versus you understand and read people well. So that's all part of that employee interdependence. Hey, I need help. Can you help me here? That's self-awareness. Self-awareness, gain self-awareness, adopt a pattern of lifelong learning. I would like to think I was done with learning, but never stops. Learning something new all the time. So not always related to classwork, but there's always something new to be had. Develop emotional intelligence and believe in themselves. So they have more discussions on there about what each of those things mean. So finding lessons, and then they contrast it on the right-hand side with struggling students. What do struggling students run up against? So you're taking care, you're accepting your mistakes, you're making it a point to take care of what needs to be taken care of. Struggling students see themselves as victims, believing that what happens to them is primarily determined by external forces. Like my brother and me arguing about his financial management. He's not very good with his finances. And he's like, well, the bank should just give me grace period. I was only a day late. It's like, banks don't work that way. Banks, it's bam, you're done. It's late, 1 second either way. It's late, it's not late. It's like, banks don't work like that. Well, they should. Well, they don't. It's, you know, it's just the way it is. So kind of comparing and contrasting as we're here. It's an opportunity. Some people say to reinvent yourself in college. I think it's just to clarify who you are. And for the first time, you're studying things that you're interested in. You don't have to study what somebody else wants. You can study what you want, which is why I don't think I could teach in grammar school. I like the fact that people want to be here. So that makes a difference in their motivation, and that makes me a better teacher when it comes to putting things together. So any questions on that? The course syllabus should be up on Blackboard. We'll go through some of the highlights here real quick. I'm Professor Mooney in 107 Marshall Hall. Student hours, when I'm in my office to meet with students, we got Mondays, Tuesdays, and this is supposed to be 11 over here, Wednesdays at 11. And then I do an extra hour in front of that on Tuesdays. So I try to be there 10 to noon on Tuesdays, 11 to noon on Mondays and Wednesdays. Most people don't show up during those, see me before or after class. If you need a special appointment, check with me. I can do lots. I can be pretty flexible when we need to get together. Email address, phone number, course description, the functions and properties of nutrients. That's where we're going to start out with. Then we'll get into comparative digestive anatomy of non-ruminants and ruminants. The effects of proper nutrition on health and reproduction. Labs will deal with composition and nutritive value of feeds, ration balancing for different classes of livestock with an emphasis on dairy cattle. So that's the course description as far as the school wants me to teach. So within that, I'm going to work with course outcomes. So understand the major nutrients and their properties and function. As I said on the first day, my goal is to make you nutrition literate. You understand the terms. You still got a lot of ways to go to be a nutritionist on a farm, but we're hoping to give you a good start here. Know the anatomy and physiology of the digestive tract for ruminants. Understand the effects of nutrition on health and reproduction. So that's right out of the course description. Appreciate feed properties and metabolic disorders. We'll talk some about them toward the end of the semester. Identify common dairy feeds. Balance simple rations. Maintain a mix sheet. Understand elementary nutrition management of a dairy. Practice safe procedures when moving cattle and learning their behavior. Should we be out around the cows we need to pay attention to that. So jumping back to the top of the page, prerequisites, none. Required materials, you'll need a calculator at some point. I assume most of you will use your phone. You need a laptop with the Office suite. You probably want a notebook and or pencil and paper, something to write with. When we're out on the dairy, you might want to have a separate set of barn clothes and or scrubbable boots, so you don't take home what we got here to wherever you are. There are lockers over there. You can kick some of the supplies out of the closets there, or you can, if you're here working shifts, you can steal one of the lockers in the bathrooms. So course syllabus and presentations are posted on Brightspace. I update that. Notice will be given at the start of class, so I try to make announcements of what we're doing and when we're doing it. Being in class, if I need to communicate with you, I try to be organized enough to just do announcements. But sometimes there's email and that'll come through your Morrisville account. No required text. Handouts will be provided as necessary. We have some readings reserved for you in library. So there's 2 books on reserve. If you're interested, you learn best with reading or looking at pictures or just a different perspective. We have those, the 2 on the left or the right side of the paper, those are on reserve. So basic feeds, basic animal nutrition and feeds and feeding. So when I say it's on reserve, do you know what that means? So you're going to the library, there's a reserve desk to the right, just as you walk in. That book is there. You go up and say, I'd like to see it. You can take it out for 2 hours and then you have to give it back. So it should always be in the library if you want to see it. On the shelves, the 2 on the left, you have the nutrient requirements of dairy cattle. If you're really interested in nutrition, it's a little out of date, but I don't think the school has the latest copy, which came out 2 years ago. I have that in my office if you want to take a look at it. The 8th edition. Is that? So the 8th edition just came out, but this is out on the shelves. You can take a look at it. It's really in depth, like PhD level stuff with equations and all that stuff. But if you have an interest, livestock feeds and feedings is also on the shelves. So this is more or less the order in which we're going to go through stuff this semester. The top half tends to be lecture. The bottom half is lab. So if you're interested in learning more about nutrients, you go to chapter 3 in livestock feeding, chapter 1 in basic animal nutrition, and chapter 1 and 2 in feeds and feeding. So the chapter and or page numbers associated with that topic as we get to it are there. We're moving into carbohydrates, 4, 3, 7, 4, and 11 respectively. So going through those, so those books are there if that helps to you. I'm doing stuff that's certainly more up to date than some of these books, especially when we get into last year's new NRC, National Research Council recommendations for dairy cattle. They came out. Most of it's the same, 99% of it, 95% of it's the same. It's that other 5% that we'll talk about related to water, and they did some changes related to minerals, things like that. We'll provide handouts. We'll provide you readings here and there as we need you. I will provide you with articles that kind of dovetail to what we're doing. You're going to be focused on what we present on lecture and in the handouts, and where there's a difference of opinion between what you find in the library versus what you find in my lectures. Lecture takes precedent. So there will be some differences in opinion, and that has to do with things that are not quite up to date. So we meet Mondays and Wednesdays. We've got labs 2 and 4 on Friday or Thursdays. So we're in this section again Professor Hayes has got a larger class. He's over there. Grades will be based on exams, quizzes, assignments, and participation. Grades will reflect how well you do on these, the outcomes that we try to focus on. If the class is interested, I will provide examinations or review sessions before the exams. We'll do quizzes without notice. I don't do makeup quizzes because we drop about 50% of your quiz grades. So usually most people want to drop their lowest 50%. So when we do that, if they're at a 10 points, most everybody's got a 9 something as a quiz average. So the purpose of quizzes are to help you learn my testing style and focus on what's important. So they're sort of directing, if you take the quizzes, you understand those things, you have a chance to fix things before we get to the exam. So grade percentages, about a third of the class is related to your 3 exams that are written exams. We've got another 14% related to lab practical. Do your feed ID exam, hopefully in the middle of October, if we can get everything presented to you in time. Lab practical will be at the end of the semester. Well, basically, I'll tell you exactly what that exam is. And you just have to come in and show that you know how to do all the things that you learned in lab. Quizzes are 10%. So if you get 9.5, 10 out of 10, it is theoretically possible to get over. There's bonus points on the quizzes to get over 10%. Assignments, big chunk of this class is assignments, 30% of your grade. And then participation, showing up, turning in your homework. Most everybody in the class gets that 10%. This is the school's breakdown of grading scale. I can't push it up. I can't make, well, you had to get a 97 to get an A. But I can lower it down depending on how well I create the exams. I do new exams every year. I don't repeat exams because every semester is different. We emphasize a little bit more here, a little less there. So we create new exams. If I can put together good exams, this scale should work. If I screw up, I'm going to have to lower it a bit to accommodate, well, you guys studied, but I didn't ask the questions the right way or give you options. So lecture, lab topics, overview of nutrition. The feed side of nutrition, plants, their composition, feed components, feed analysis, feed ID, feed preservation. The animal side of nutrition, as we talked about in class, anatomy and physiology of dairy cows, rumen function, metabolism, 40 nutrients, requirements, maintenance, growth, pregnancy, and lactation, the interaction of animal and feed, fermentation, digestion, absorption, metabolism, and ration balancing. So we're sort of on the animal side right now, then we'll switch over to we're on the plant side, we'll switch over to the animal side, and then we'll kind of go back and forth for the rest of the semester. Course policies are pretty straightforward. So you're expected to be in class. If I don't show up within 15 minutes of the scheduled time, you can leave without penalty. I've only done that twice since I've been here. Snow does not stop me. So when I lived in town, I just wait for the plow trucks to go by and then walk up behind the plow trucks. Let's see. One was a defective clock in my office. It was like, shouldn't it be in class? Well, the clock says no. The clock was wrong. The students waited 15 minutes before they came to find me. So they got missed out on class. And the other is I was in a meeting with the dean and he kept me long. So and I wasn't looking at the clock like I should have been. So I will get to class. I don't even know how to cancel classes. There's a procedure that it's done. I don't even know how it worked. So no disruptions in class, no disrespect. We'll probably move toward putting our cell phones away as we move forward. Cheating will not be tolerated and it will be handled according to department policies, and everybody read that in your student handbook. So first thing, get a 0 on whatever it is. A letter goes in your file. I guess that's electronic. It used to be an actual file. And the second time it happens, you get a 0 in the course. And then every time after that, you fail courses. So I have turned it in, as I told the students last Thursday. There was one assignment that was turned in by half the class. And when it was put in an electronic Dropbox, I tend to print things out to look at things and work through them. All 12 were photocopy identical if you hold them up to the light. And they all have the same name at the top because somebody forgot to check the header. So they weren't paying attention, and so I asked the following students to stay after class. Can you explain to me how you all have the same name on your turned in assignment? So that was a fun discussion with the dean. It turns out one person passed the assignment from one group to another group, and that second group took the same assignment. Everybody turned in the same thing. So, so either take a good look at the headers in Excel before you turn things in, or don't do that. There's a whole lot of things. Missing an assignment is not the world's biggest thing. If you turn it in late, they give you 50%. So just turn it in late, get it done. If we're looking at probably 30 or 40 assignments in this class, like all your 5 questions or 5 assignments, you're looking at a 0.5% towards your final grade related to each of them. It's not worth plagiarizing it for a 0.5%. There are a number of resources on campus. These are hyperlinked into the document. So accessibility services, if you need extra time at exams, you need somebody that can take notes for you, you need specific notes in some way, shape, or form, you have to work through accessibility services. Campus advising, has anybody met their campus advisor yet? Will probably here shortly if you haven't. You have your kind of major advisor, and then you have a campus advisor.
I got an email from her like last semester or something. I didn't. It was like a respond if you want to. I didn't want to.
So
So
everybody's got a campus advisor. I think I might be a campus advisor next time I come around. They certainly have some students that need a whole lot extra help, but most of the students on this campus don't need extra help. Distance education, we're not dealing with that right now. If you're concerned about diversity, equity, inclusion, there are statements on the website related to that. Everybody knows how to get to Brightspace, and you're probably making the transition better than I am related to what.
It's debatable. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm still fighting with Brightspace.
I made sure that I made Brightspace a favorite because otherwise I knew I was gonna type in Blackboard every time.
Yeah,
But I just click on the link in my computer.
Yep, it's up top. The health center and counseling centers are available to you on campus. If you have a physical ailment or you want to talk to somebody about some concerns you're having, both are free. They're part of your fees on campus. Counseling center and the health center as well is supposed to be confidential. I know the counseling center is. I don't know how confidential the health center is. Library, you know where that is. Tutoring center. We don't really have tutors for this class. So if you're struggling in this class, let me know. We'll find somebody to help you. If you don't, I can help you. Or if you don't, a lot of people don't like talking to the professor. There are ways, people we can get to help you out. University police, everybody knows how to get there. It's 911, that's relatively new. It used to be 6410. Because we had to call campus first before we call 911. Now it's the other way around. So make sure you know that. Make sure you have university police in your phone programmed and ready to go. The help desk, if you've got computer issues, that's a good place to go. I'll probably save your ass more than once this semester, although viruses don't seem to be as much of the thing as they used to be. I think all the people that used to create viruses are now working for all these big companies as antivirus people, so they're one step ahead. But we do get lockouts and things like that, or your screen goes blank, or you drop your laptop. So that's the basic syllabus. We'll, if we if we have to change something like the percentages of the grades, or if we need to move exams for whatever reason, snow days or something like that, I will talk to you and we'll find a consensus, good date to move it. I don't want to move it when, you know, everybody else is giving exams and things like that. So we'll work together and I'll bring things up as things get moved around. So next up, the thing we're going to try to do today is sampling. So sampling is a very important skill when it comes to nutrition. Taking a good sample is the basis. First thing you need to do if you want to run the quality nutrition program. I'm of the opinion that the farm should do their own sampling. That's not so much that nutritionists or people coming onto your farm don't know how to do it, is they usually don't take the time to do it right. So I know I get made fun of it by the way I'm going to teach you, but I'll show you this semester. It's worth about $1,000 an hour what I'm teaching you. If you take 10 minutes to do a sample right, it's worth $1,000 every month per 100 cows. So we'll show you why that is going through, but we're just going to get into the technique today. So there's nutrition related to cows, and then there's feeding. Feeding is what we do on the farm. How do we take a nutritionless ration, translate it into a mix sheet, and then feed that mix sheet accurately? That's what we as producers need to do. And the person usually responsible for that is called the feeder. Now, the feeder may be somebody that does multiple jobs on a smaller farm. I was a feeder and I did a lot of other jobs for my father, but feeding was a big one. Some places you got two people that all they do their entire shift is feeding, because you're dealing with so many different rations and so many deliveries of feed. So one of the things we need to think about is analyzing our feeds. We talked a little bit about that this morning, but how often do we need to take a sample? And that's really related to how variable the feed stuff is. The more variable the feed stuff is, the more often we have to sample it to keep on top of it. So nutritionists need to advise clients on how frequently to analyze ingredients and byproduct commodities. So working with your nutritionist, what do I need to do? How often do I need to do this? 100 cow dairy once a month is usually enough for your forages. If you're dealing with thousands and thousands of cows, maybe every other day is economically viable. Ohio State's done a lot of research on how often you need to sample to stay on top of your nutrition program economically. So St. Pierre and Ohio State has done most of that work. Frequency depends on the variability of ingredient. The more variable it is, the more often we need to sample it. If we're dealing with our forages, they have a greater variability, especially certain types of silage structures, ag bags. They have variables as we move from field to field, drier, wetter. We need to stay on top of that. They may have more alfalfa in this field versus this field. So if we put them in an ag bag, if we stack them in an upright silo, we're going to have layers of different composition that we have to stay up on top of. If we're doing it in a layered into a bunk, that variability becomes a sandwich going up. And then if we shave it off, we get pretty much a representative thing every day. So maybe we don't have to sample quite as much. We usually sample often early as we're going up that toe. Once we get to steady state level, we don't sample usually as much. And we'll show you some examples of that. Byproduct feeds. If we're buying byproducts from human food consumption from one source or another, Baldwinsville has the Budweiser plant. Their brewers' grains go out. They're not going to be the same every day, but getting a protein on them to get a feel for, okay, what's the high and what's the low? And then maybe I balance my rations to that low point, that average. Take the average, drop a standard deviation, and that's how I feed that. But you need samples to figure that out. Barred land down here gets vegetable waste from Walmart's. And that's going to vary depending on the season. You got sweet corn waste right now. Another 2 months, you're going to have pumpkin waste, depending on what it is and how it is there. Keeping an eye on what's the protein content. What should we be using? So getting a feel for those ingredients, we can say, I want to cheat high or cheat low on this feed sample until I really know what I'm dealing with. That composition variability, we can take an average of that, or we say we'll be a little low. We tend to look at our running average of dry matters here, and then we'll go like 1 point below. So we're always saying it's a little wetter than it actually is. So if we put in a little bit more dry matter, we're okay. But we don't want to overfeed water because that's going to cause all kinds of problems that we'll talk about. So the farmers and the nutritionists, they need to work together to figure all this stuff out. It becomes part of your feeding program. So when do we analyze feeds? Well, after we get them in. So after harvest, hay, probably going to wait till that hay cures. We want that hay to, it's going to lose probably 10% of its weight. It's very obvious in small square bales. When you put them in the hay mow, you can barely get your fingers in. When you take them out, they're a little looser than they were, right? So you've lost 10% of the dry matter, and that's usually some good stuff as things cure. Silages, you might be losing 20% of the dry matter you put in. So if we're putting in 50 pounds per cubic foot, wet, dry, as fed, in our silos, we're running probably somewhere around 40. We've lost 20%. So the microbes that do the ensiling, that generate the acids, are going to take their cut. They're going to turn stuff into gases that blow away. They're going to turn it into water. And then there's byproducts left behind. But we want to wait for that process. It takes about 21 days. We want to wait till we're on the other side of it. To check on that, we may do things like sample as we go, and we'll show you how to make little silage bags this semester. And you could send that silage in as opposed to opening up the silo and getting a sample out. You test one thing, you notice things are different. Well, that's not the same stuff that was coming out. It looks different. It's longer. This got more alfalfa in it. If there's any change in the feeds, we probably want to pull a sample, if nothing else, for dry matters. Silages between the layers on an upright silo or an ag bag, between the cuttings. We've got to have different cuttings, especially in the same silo. Upright, we used to have a harvestor. You're always putting the next cutting on top. As things look different, you need to get a new sample. And then you sample anytime the cows. So you're looking at feeds here, the cows here. Anytime the cows tell you something's not the same anymore, they start reacting differently to what you think is exactly the same. So they may drop off in intake. DMI is dry matter intake. They may drop off in production. They may start getting fatter or thinner. The feeder I used to work with at my last job, he's like, yeah, after I get done feeding things out in the morning, when the sunlight's coming through the barn, that's a great time to check body condition. So I kind of scan down the line. Okay, they're all like 2.5s, and I keep checking it week to week. Are they getting fatter or thinner? as time goes on. Big spike or big look for is our health problems. Do we have things that are going to happen or things that creep up? DAs, ketosis, retained placentas. We need to go back and check to make sure that everything's what it's supposed to be. Usually it isn't a nutrition problem, but we need to double check to make sure our potassiums haven't moved, our calciums haven't moved. So we're taking that feed sample, as we mentioned this morning. You're going to take that feed sample, and what's going to be analyzed is a little pile, about a gram of feed, little pile teaspoon that fits in the palm of your hand. Your challenge is to make sure that little pile represents often hundreds of tons of feed. So taking a little bit of time and effort to make sure you're doing your best to make sure that little piles represents the big pile is important. The reason it's important is the analysis of that little pile of feed will determine how much grain you have to buy. And the system I'm going to show you today, make sure you get full credit for all the energy in your feed and full credit for all the protein in your feed. Energy and protein are expensive. If I do it, you do it the way I tell you to today, I'll show you at the end of the semester when we're balancing rations, what that works out to. Works out to about $1,000 on 100 cows every month. So if I do one sample or two samples a month, you're looking at $1,000 for that 10 minutes of time. Time well spent. There are certain places we can cut corners. To me, sampling is not one of them. And so we'll make sure we go through that. And as I mentioned already, the feeder needs to be able to take a good sample. So the feeder is the person that pulls down the fresh feed every day, knows what's going in. That's the time to take the sample. Historically, that was 3 a.m., 4 a.m. here. On the positive side, you won't have to get up to do that. We have a deal with the feeders. They're here. They take the sample. I take the buckets and process them. I do the sampling. I do the dry matters going through. So the feeder needs to be that person. So how are we going to do that? So this is our method. First thing we do is subsample. That's what we have the feeder do for us in this class. Scott on Monday, Randy on Thursdays takes a feed sample so we can avoid having to do that or get up at 4 a.m. just to fill a bucket. Try to avoid that if we can. If I'm up at 4 a.m., I'm usually doing something else and I don't want to be dealing with feed sampling. So we take a 5-gallon bucket, more or less. We're going to use those buckets over there. You go along the defaced pile and you underhand into that bucket, keeping your bucket as close to your hand as possible. The idea behind that is I want to get all the good stuff. All the little stuff in corn silage has all the energy in it. All the little stuff in haylage has all the protein in it. If I pick it up this way and put it in, grab it, all the little stuff falls out. And I'll show you, we did some analysis on sampling different ways that's going to call, that's where that $1,000 comes from. So if I don't get credit for all that little stuff, I don't get the best bang for my buck when it comes to do things. If you're going to pay $100 to have something analyzed, let's do it right. So we'll dump that 5-gallon pail on plastic, and it will need to be declumped. So there's a bunch of clumps in there, especially our haylage. We need to break all those up. We want all feed particles to move independently. Then we'll roll and quarter. We've got sheets of plastic, very high tech. We lay that out and we work our sample around in circles. We try to do 3 laps. We roll it to a corner and then we roll it this way and we roll it this way. We roll it this way, we roll it that way. We try to tumble that feed. I'll demonstrate it when we get out there. Once we go around 3 times, we quarter it. We divide it up by moving our hand back and forth, dividing it up. We get rid of opposite corners. So we're reducing the sample size. We start with a 5-gallon pail. We want to get it down to a sample bag about that big. So we're doing representative removals. So what's on the plastic should be the same as what's removed if we remove opposite corners. And with the plastic underneath, we keep all that fine stuff available, and it gets in the bag. It goes to the lab. So we make sure that we've got a good sample. You usually have to do that roll and quarter thing with a 5-gallon bucket 3 times. We get down to that sample, we put it in the plastic bag, we try to squeeze all the air out we can. We don't want air sitting in there because air leads to silage rotting. We don't want it to rot between when we took the sample and when it gets analyzed. Because if it rots, all the good stuff gets turned to CO2 and water because you've added oxygen to the bag. Poof, it's gone. We don't get credit for it. We have to buy more grain to make things up on paper. In the summertime, I'll consider freezing a sample before I put it in the mail, or drying it down so it won't rot on the way there. So thinking about when we mail stuff, we don't usually mail past Tuesday. So you mail on Monday and Tuesday, you drop it off. I keep it in the refrigerator usually till the mail leaves down here once a day at 4 o'clock. So you try to get it down there about 3. It goes to Syracuse. It's been Batavia tomorrow morning. So we don't want to put it out on a Friday and have it sit in a hot postal truck all weekend. So making sure we time everything out. When we're working with a nutritionist, we're pulling samples on Monday. We're doing dry matters on Monday and Thursday. So sampling on Monday is a good day to do that. Instead of just doing dry matters, we split it off. You go dry matter and forage analysis. So we got to wait for our third to come in. So if you want to stand up, stretch. You should be here in a minute or 2. And then we'll go out and show you how to sample feed. So we need to do mug shots. Okay, so everything okay over there for you taking a moment over here with me?
Yes.
Okay.